The cafe on the corner of the old market street was the kind of place where sunlight always seemed to find its way inside. Soft music played in the background. The smell of warm bread lingered in the air, and the wooden tables had little flowers placed in simple jars. It was peaceful, comforting, and familiar to the people who visited often. This cafe was known not just for its food, but for how it made people feel welcome. Among the small team working there was a young woman named Maya. She was gentle in the way she spoke and moved, always careful, always focused. She didn't talk much, but whenever she smiled, it felt genuine. Her hair was tied back neatly, and though her shoes were worn and old, she polished them every night. She didn't have much, but she valued what she did have. Maya lived with her mother in a tiny apartment a few streets away. Her mother had health problems, so Maya worked longer hours than most people her age. She worked mornings and afternoons, and sometimes even stayed late when someone else was sick or couldn't come. She didn't complain. She believed that life had meaning when you did things for the people you loved. The cafe owner, Mr. Adrian, was a calm and humble man. He didn't look like someone who owned a business. He dressed simply, spoke softly, and never raised his voice. He treated his workers like family, and people respected him for that. He had built the cafe from almost nothing, and he believed in giving opportunities to those who needed them, and Maya was someone who truly appreciated the chance. On that particular day, the weather was bright and the cafe was a little more crowded than usual. It was the weekend, and many young people were out walking, taking pictures, laughing, enjoying their free time. The bell above the cafe door rang every few minutes as new customers walked in. Maya moved between tables, delivering drinks and plates of warm pastries, writing down orders, and thanking customers with her soft voice. She didn't rush, but she also didn't waste time. Her steps had a rhythm to them, like she had learned to move with the flow of the place. Around noon, a group of 3 teenagers walked in, led by a girl named Sierra. Sierra was known in town. Her father was wealthy and owned properties, cars, and businesses that people always talked about. Sierra liked being noticed. She liked wearing clothes that stood out, carrying expensive bags, and acting like the world existed to impress her. Her friends often followed her, copying the way she talked and laughed, as if they were afraid of losing her attention. The moment Sierra entered the cafe, the atmosphere shifted slightly. The laughter became sharper, louder. Sierra walked with confidence, almost like she expected everyone to move out of her way. She snapped her fingers at a table near the window and sat down without looking at anyone. Maya approached their table calmly with her notebook in hand. "Hello," she said politely. "What would you like to order today?" Sierra stared at her without answering. Her eyes scanned Maya from head to toe, slowly, like she was inspecting something she found strange. Her friends watched her, waiting for her reaction. "Are you the waitress?" Sierra finally asked. "Yes," Maya replied gently. "I'll be serving you today." Sierra leaned back in her chair. "Wow, I didn't think they would let someone like you work here." Her friends giggled softly, covering their mouths. Maya heard the insult clearly, but she pretended not to. She had learned long ago that reacting only gave bullies what they wanted. "What would you like to have?" Maya asked again, keeping her voice steady. Sierra rolled her eyes. "Fine, I'll take the iced caramel coffee." She paused and looked at her friends. "And make sure you don't mess it up. I don't drink cheap, watery coffee. I have standards." Her friends placed their orders too, though less dramatically. Maya wrote everything carefully, thanked them, and turned to walk back to the counter. But before she could take more than 2 steps, Sierra called out loudly, "Wait, one more thing." Maya turned. Sierra tilted her head and spoke in a slow, exaggerated tone. "I just want to make sure you heard me clearly. I don't want it to taste cheap." She smirked. "You know, like your life." The cafe grew quiet. A few nearby customers glanced over, uncomfortable. Sierra seemed pleased with the attention. Maya lowered her eyes, nodded politely, and walked away. There was a small sting in her chest, but she pushed it down. She reminded herself why she worked. She thought of her mother waiting at home, needing medicine. She thought of how every day she was getting closer to saving enough money to take her mother for treatment. She refused to let someone like Sierra break her spirit. At the counter, Maya prepared the drinks carefully, measuring everything slowly to make sure the coffee turned out just right. Her hands moved with practiced skill. She placed the drinks on a tray, walked back to the table and set each one down gently. Sierra didn't even say thank you. She picked up her drink, took a sip, and then made a dramatic face. Oh no, this is terrible. She looked up at Maya with raised eyebrows. Do you even know what you're doing? Or is this your first time working in your entire poor life? Maya didn't flinch. If you'd like, I can make it again, she said softly. Sierra laughed. Make it again? Or maybe you should just get a job somewhere you can't ruin things. Her voice grew louder intentionally. I mean, seriously, do they just hire anyone here? Her friends laughed harder this time. The room felt heavy, uncomfortable. Some customers whispered. Others pretended not to look, but their eyes drifted toward the table anyway. Still, Maya didn't argue. She simply picked up the coffee and returned to the counter to make it again. As she worked, a man sitting alone near the corner watched the scene quietly. He had been there for a while, drinking tea and reading something on his phone. He didn't look special, just simple clothes, calm expression. No one paid much attention to him, but his eyes followed every detail. He saw how Maya moved, how she tried to remain calm, how she didn't defend herself even though she was being mistreated. And he saw the girl who insulted her, laughing like she had won something. Maya finished the drink again and returned to the table. Sierra didn't thank her. She didn't apologize. She didn't stop. She kept going. Honestly, I don't understand how someone chooses to be like you, Sierra said with a dismissive tone. Working for tiny money, wearing old shoes, serving people all day. Don't you feel embarrassed? Maya looked at the table for a moment before speaking. No, she answered softly. I'm doing my best, and I'm grateful to work here. Her voice wasn't loud. It wasn't defensive. It was simply truthful. But Sierra wasn't prepared for a reply like that. She blinked, a little surprised. People who got bullied usually acted hurt, angry, or scared. But Maya didn't. She was calm, steady, grounded. Her strength was quiet and real. And something about that irritated Sierra even more. She was about to speak again, ready to insult her once more, when a chair moved from the corner of the room. The quiet man stood up. He took a slow step toward the table. No one knew him. No one recognized him. But they were about to. And Sierra was not ready for what was going to happen next. The cafe grew unusually quiet when the man in the corner stood up. His chair made only a soft sound against the floor, but somehow it drew attention. He didn't rush and didn't look angry. His steps were relaxed, unhurried, like he had all the time in the world. Yet something about him made people notice. Maya saw him walking toward the table and felt a slight worry. She didn't want anyone else involved. She especially didn't want trouble at work. She knew Mr. Adrian valued peacefulness in the cafe. She tried to stop the man with a small shake of her head, as if telling him everything was fine. But he continued walking. Sierra leaned back with her drink still in her hand, her face filled with confidence. She assumed, of course, that the man had come to agree with her or take her side. Her friends looked delighted, expecting the scene to turn even more in their favor. The man arrived at the table and looked at Maya first. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice low and warm. Maya nodded quickly. "Yes, I'm fine. Thank you." He watched her carefully, as if he could see beyond the words. But he didn't push. Instead, he turned to Sierra and her friends. All three teenagers stared at him with curiosity, though Sierra wore an expression that suggested boredom. "Can we help you?" Sierra asked sharply. She thought his simple clothing meant he was just another worker or maybe a customer who wanted to impress someone. "Yes," the man replied gently. "I think we need to talk about how people treat one another." Sierra blinked slowly, and then laughed. "Oh, please, don't tell me you're one of those people who go around teaching lessons. This is a cafe, not school." Her friends laughed with her, but not as confidently as before. Something about the man's presence felt different to them, though none of them could explain it. The man didn't get upset. He simply smiled kindly. "You're right. This isn't school," he said. "But respect is something we carry everywhere we go." Sierra sighed loudly. "Look, I don't need a lecture. I was only telling the truth. Some people choose easy lives and then complain. If someone doesn't want to be treated like they're poor, they should try harder not to be." Maya felt her chest tighten again, but she remained quiet. The man looked at Sierra for a long moment. Not judging, not angry, just looking, as if he were trying to understand her. Then he asked calmly, "Do you believe that people only deserve respect if they have money?" Sierra raised her chin. "Of course. Money shows success. It shows you worked for something. It shows you're better than average." Her words echoed through the cafe. A few customers exchanged looks, some shaking their heads. The man did not react with anger. He simply offered a calm response. "I see," he said. "Then let me ask you, what have you worked for?" Sierra froze. No one had ever asked her that before. Not like that. Not directly. Her friends glanced at her, waiting for her answer. Sierra opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. A small crease formed between her eyebrows. It was only a flicker of hesitation, but it was enough for everyone to notice. She didn't answer. The man didn't press the question. He simply stepped aside and motioned gently toward the counter. "I think we should all breathe for a moment," he suggested. "Perhaps we can share a better conversation after that." Sierra crossed her arms. "Are you the manager or something?" The man didn't reply immediately. Instead, he turned to Maya. "Could you bring a cup of hot tea to table 3 when you have a moment?" he asked softly. Maya nodded, though she still didn't fully understand what was happening. The man smiled and went back to his seat for a moment, leaving Sierra and her friends whispering among themselves. They exchanged guesses about him. Maybe he was a teacher, maybe someone trying to show off, maybe just a stranger who liked interfering in things that didn't concern him. Meanwhile, Maya prepared the tea, her hands steady but her mind busy. She placed the warm cup on a tray and walked to table 3. The man thanked her with a quiet smile. "Please sit," he said gently. Maya hesitated. "I shouldn't sit while working." "It's all right," he assured her. "Just for a moment." She slowly sat down, unsure of what to say. The man looked at her kindly. "You handle yourself with grace." Maya lowered her eyes. "I just try not to make problems." "There is strength in how you carry yourself," he said. Not everyone could stay calm in situations like that. Maya didn't know how to respond. No one really noticed her most days. She was used to blending in, to being quiet. Being seen, really seen, felt unfamiliar. "Thank you," she replied softly. Just then, the cafe door opened again, and a few new customers walked in. Maya stood to return to work, but the man raised a hand gently, not to stop her forcefully, but to ask her to wait one more second. "I'll speak soon," he said. "And when I do, don't worry. You will not be in any trouble." Maya nodded, though she didn't understand why he said that. She went back to work, unsure but trusting his calm tone. Meanwhile, Sierra watched everything from across the cafe. The quiet confidence of the man bothered her. She didn't like not being in control. She didn't like not knowing who someone was. "What is his deal?" she whispered to her friends. "He's acting like he owns the place." Her friends didn't respond. They were starting to look uncomfortable, though they didn't want to admit it. This didn't feel like a fun situation anymore. After a few minutes, the cafe became full again with the usual soft sound of cups, spoons, and people chatting. But the tension still hovered like something waiting to happen. Then the man stood up once more. He walked toward the register slowly and spoke to the worker there. The worker nodded immediately, respectfully, and handed him something. A small key. Sierra's eyes widened, though she didn't yet understand why. The man walked to the center of the cafe. Everyone looked up, sensing that something important was happening. Maya watched from behind the counter, her chest tight again, but this time for a different reason. She didn't want attention. She didn't want a scene. But the moment felt bigger than her. The man took a deep breath. He looked calm. gentle, unshaken. Then he spoke clearly and kindly. I would like to apologize to everyone for the discomfort earlier. This cafe was built to be a place of peace and respect. And I care deeply about how anyone who works here or visits here is treated. His voice carried through the cafe. No one interrupted. Sierra's confidence wavered. Her friends sat frozen. Maya stood still, her heart beating faster with each second. Then the man continued. My name is Adrian, and I am the owner of this cafe. Silence spread across the room like a wave. Sierra's jaw slowly dropped. Her friends stared with wide eyes. Maya covered her mouth, stunned. The simple, quiet man who had been sitting alone all morning was not just a customer. He was the person Sierra had demanded to speak to. He was the person Sierra had criticized Maya to. He was the person who had watched everything unfold. And now he stood before everyone, calm and steady. Not angry, not loud, not cruel. Just firm. Sierra blinked, trying to process what she had done. Her confidence drained like water from an open glass. She had insulted someone she believed to be beneath her. Someone she never imagined could be above her in any way. But now she stood face to face with the truth. Her words meant nothing. Her pride meant nothing. Her assumptions meant nothing. And everyone was waiting to see what the owner would say next. The silence inside the cafe felt almost solid. It was the kind of silence where even breathing seemed too loud. People looked from the owner to Sierra, from Sierra to Maya, and then back again. No one wanted to move first. Maya stood behind the counter frozen, unsure if she should look up or look away. Her hands rested on the edge of the counter, fingers gripping it lightly. She never expected the quiet man who had been sitting alone would be the one who owned the place. She had spoken to him before, served him tea, and had never guessed. He didn't carry himself like someone who thought he was more important than others. He didn't show off or try to be admired. He simply watched and understood. Sierra's face was red now. Not from embarrassment alone, but from realizing she no longer had control of the situation. Everything inside her told her to say something, to defend herself, to fight back. But she couldn't find the words. Her throat felt tight. Her friends looked away, staring at their drinks or the floor. They had come in laughing and loud, but now they sat like children who had been caught misbehaving. The confidence that had filled their table earlier had disappeared. The owner spoke again, his voice clear but still calm. Everyone deserves respect, he said. Not because of what they own or where they come from or what they look like, but because we are all human. And dignity is something we owe each other. His eyes moved gently toward Maya, who looked down. Maya is one of the most hardworking people I have ever known, he continued. Every day, she comes here early. She takes care of customers with patience. She helps keep this place warm and welcoming. She works to support her mother, and she doesn't complain. She carries more strength in her quiet steps than many people carry in their loud voices. Maya felt her chest fill with emotion, but she kept her expression steady. She didn't want to cry. Not here. Not now. She wasn't sure if she would be crying because of pain, or because someone had finally seen her. Sierra spoke suddenly, her voice small. I didn't know. The owner turned his head slightly toward her. You didn't ask, he replied gently. That one sentence lingered in the air. Sierra swallowed hard. She opened her mouth to defend herself, but the words wouldn't come. In truth, she had never asked. She never thought to ask. She always assumed she understood people just by looking at them. She never imagined that she could be wrong. Her voice trembled a little as she tried again. I didn't mean to. The owner lifted his hand, calmly. This isn't about punishment, he said. It's about awareness and responsibility. Sierra's friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They wanted to disappear, to melt into the chairs and never be seen again. The owner looked around the cafe and spoke to everyone, not just Sierra. So many people believe that wealth is the measure of someone's worth. But wealth is only one part of life. There are people who work harder than we could ever imagine, yet they don't have luxury. There are people who have more money than they could ever spend, and yet they lack kindness. His words were simple, but they held weight. He turned back toward Sierra, who sat with her hands clenched in her lap. I do not know what your life is like, he said. I don't know what has shaped your beliefs. But I do know this: humiliating others does not make you stronger. It only reveals what you have yet to learn. Sierra blinked rapidly, her eyes beginning to shine. Not full tears, just the beginning of realization. The uncomfortable kind. Her voice came out fragile. I thought... She paused, searching for the right words. I thought being strong meant not caring what anyone thought. The owner nodded slowly. Strength is not about ignoring people. It is about understanding them. It is about choosing who you become, even when you feel pain or insecurity. Sierra looked down again. Her expensive earrings shimmered under the cafe light, but in that moment, they seemed small and meaningless. Her clothes, her shoes, her polished nails. None of them could protect her from the truth settling in her chest. I didn't know she was helping her family, she whispered. You didn't need to know, the owner replied softly. Her value does not come from struggle or story. It comes simply from who she is. Those words struck differently. The cafe felt warm again, but not in the comfortable way it usually did. It was warm in the way that comes before someone learns something important about themselves. Sierra's friends exchanged glances. One of them cleared her throat lightly. We shouldn't have laughed, she said quietly. We were wrong. The owner nodded once. He wasn't trying to shame them. He wasn't angry. His words were steady, guiding, gentle but firm. Maya finally lifted her eyes. She looked at Sierra. Not with resentment, not with triumph, but with calm. I understand, she said softly. Sometimes we don't think about what others are going through. It happens. But it doesn't have to continue. Sierra's eyes widened a little. She hadn't expected kindness. She had expected anger, maybe even revenge. But Maya had none of that in her. It made Sierra feel even smaller. I shouldn't have said those things, Sierra murmured. Her voice almost broke on the last word. I was trying to look confident, I guess. Or, I don't know. She shook her head, frustrated with herself. I just didn't want to look weak. The owner spoke again, with the gentleness of a teacher who does not scold, but guides. Kindness is not weakness, he said, and empathy does not make you less. If anything, it makes you more. Sierra took a slow breath, like someone trying to steady themselves. Her friends sat beside her, quiet, thoughtful. Everyone in the cafe seemed to be breathing differently now. More carefully, more consciously. The world had not shifted dramatically. There was no dramatic collapse, no shouting, no dramatic apologies. Just the simple truth settling into the corners of the room. And sometimes, simple truth is the most powerful moment of all. The owner turned toward Maya again. You can continue your work, he said gently. Everything is all right now. Maya nodded, and for the first time since the situation began, she felt her shoulders relax. She felt seen, supported, valued, not just tolerated or pitied. She walked toward another table to check if they needed anything. She did the same work. She carried the same tray. She spoke in the same soft voice. But something about her presence felt different now. She didn't look smaller than the world. She looked equal to it. Sierra slowly stood from her seat. She didn't leave yet. She didn't know what to do with her hands or her expression, but she knew she couldn't just walk away pretending nothing happened. She glanced toward Maya, opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came yet. Not the right ones. Not yet. Instead, she quietly sat back down, her mind full and heavy, realizing this moment was not over. This was only the beginning of her learning. And in that cafe, where sunlight filtered through the windows and flowers sat in little jars on every table, something shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but genuinely. The next step was coming. For all of them. The cafe slowly returned to the gentle rhythm it was known for. Cups clinked softly again. Conversations resumed, though quieter this time. People spoke in lowered tones, as if they were trying not to disturb the moment that had just taken place. It was as though the room itself understood that something meaningful had happened, and it didn't want to interrupt the quiet growth happening inside some hearts. Maya continued her work with steady steps. She refilled cups, wiped tables, and greeted new customers as if the world had always moved this way. But inside, she was still sorting through the feelings unfolding inside her. Being defended, being spoken for, being valued, those were not familiar things in her life. She usually carried her battles alone. She was used to enduring things quietly. She was used to being strong by herself. But today someone had stood beside her. Not because she asked. Not because she fought. But because she deserved it. She wasn't used to that kind of support. And she wasn't sure how to hold it in her heart yet. Across the room, Sierra sat with her hands wrapped around her drink. The ice had melted. The drink was watery now. She hadn't taken a sip in a long time. Her friends whispered to each other softly, unsure of what to say or whether they should leave. Sierra's mind was running in circles. She had never been corrected like that before. At home, she had everything done for her. People praised her father's success rather than questioning her behavior. Teachers often overlooked her attitude because they didn't want trouble from her parents. Friends followed her because it was easier to stay close to someone who seemed powerful. So she had never been forced to stop and face herself. Not until now. She watched Maya work. The way she smiled gently even when tired. The way she spoke with calmness even when pressured. The way she stayed kind even after being humiliated. Sierra felt something unfamiliar. It wasn't guilt alone. It wasn't embarrassment alone. It was more like a realization. She had been wrong. Not just today, but in the way she viewed the world. She didn't want to admit it yet, but she could feel the truth settling inside her slowly, like a weight not meant to crush her, but to make her look at herself differently. Finally, Sierra stood up. Her legs felt heavier than usual. Her friends looked at her, not knowing what she planned to do. She took a slow breath, as if preparing herself to enter a space that required softness. Something she wasn't used to showing. She walked toward the counter where Maya stood drying glasses. Maya looked up, startled for a moment to see her approaching. Her expression softened without effort. Not welcoming, but not defensive either. Just open. Sierra opened her mouth to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. She exhaled, tried again. "Can I talk to you?" she asked quietly. Her voice was different now. It didn't have the sharp confidence it carried earlier. It wasn't coated in pride. It was just human. Maya nodded. "Yes, of course." They stepped to the side, near the small shelves where napkins and spoons were stored. The cafe sounds faded slightly in the background. Sierra looked down at her hands, like she didn't recognize them. She had painted her nails that morning, choosing a bold color, wanting to shine. Now the color seemed too bright, too loud for how she felt inside. "I didn't know you were helping your mother," she said softly. Maya shook her head gently. "You didn't need to know. My life isn't more important because of that. I would still work here. I would still try to be polite." Sierra swallowed. Her voice cracked slightly when she spoke again. "I said things I shouldn't have. I didn't think about what I was saying, or how it would make you feel. I just—" She trailed off, frustrated by how difficult honesty could be. "I just didn't want to feel small," she finished quietly. Maya looked at her with understanding rather than judgment. "Sometimes," Maya said softly, "people act unkindly because they feel unseen, or afraid, or lonely. I know that feeling too." Sierra looked up, surprised. "You do?" "Yes," Maya replied with a small, sad smile. "When you don't have a lot, people sometimes assume things about you. They speak to you as if you are less. And after a while, you start to believe it a little. So you try to stay unseen to avoid being hurt." Sierra blinked slowly, absorbing that. She had never thought of it that way. That silence can be a shield just like loudness can be one. Maya continued, "But staying unseen also means missing moments of connection. I've learned that recently. From working here. From watching people. Sometimes we all hide. Just in different ways." Sierra felt something inside her shift. Not like a sudden snap, but like snow melting. Quiet. Slow. Real. "I didn't know how to be different," Sierra admitted. Her voice shook, not from sadness, but from truth finally being said aloud. I always thought, if I acted confident, no one could hurt me. Maya's eyes softened with empathy. I think many people feel that way, she said. But confidence is not the same as kindness. One protects your image. The other protects your heart. Sierra exhaled slowly, a breath that felt like it had been trapped inside her for a long time. She looked around the cafe again. It was warm and calm. People were living simple moments, sharing meals, talking softly, smiling. No one here was trying to prove anything to anyone. She realized she didn't know how to live like that. Gently, simply, honestly. But maybe she wanted to learn. Can I ask you something? Sierra said in a small voice. Of course, Maya replied. How do you stay kind? Sierra asked. When life is hard? Maya didn't answer immediately. She closed her eyes for a moment, as if searching inside herself. Then she said, I don't always feel kind. I get tired. I get sad. Sometimes I want to shout. But I remember that the world is full of people carrying things we cannot see. And I don't want to add more weight to anyone. Not if I can help it. Sierra nodded slowly, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. Not dramatic tears, not loud ones. Just quiet ones that come when someone finally sees a part of themselves they had tried to ignore. Thank you, Sierra whispered, for not hating me. Maya smiled gently. There is nothing to hate. There is only something to learn. Sierra let out a shaky breath and wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed at feeling vulnerable in public. But no one laughed. No one stared. No one judged. It was a safe place even now. The owner watched the two of them from across the cafe. He didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. He simply nodded to himself. Not because the lesson was complete, but because the lessons had begun. For Maya, it was a moment of realizing she could stand without shrinking. For Sierra, it was a moment of realizing she could soften without breaking. For the cafe, it was just another day. Sunlight, warm bread, soft music. And yet something in the air felt new. Healing doesn't make noise, but it changes everything quietly. The afternoon sun slowly began to lower outside the cafe windows, washing everything in a warm golden color. The light landed on the small tables, the coffee cups, the pastries in their glass case, and on the faces of the people inside. It made everything appear softer, quieter, and calmer, as if the world was taking a gentle breath. Maya finished wiping the counter and placed the cloth neatly back in its place. Her hands finally relaxed a little. She could still feel the emotions of the day inside her, but they were settling now, like waves becoming still after a storm. She didn't know what the future held, but she felt something shift inside her. Something small but real. There was a bit more space in her chest to breathe. Sierra was still standing nearby. Her friends had left the cafe quietly a short while ago, unsure of what to say or how to fit themselves into something that didn't belong to them. Sierra didn't feel angry that they left. She didn't feel abandoned. She understood, maybe for the first time, that some moments are meant to be experienced alone. The cafe owner finished speaking to a supplier near the back, then walked toward the counter with calm steps. His presence didn't demand attention. It simply carried warmth with it. He had an air of someone who had seen many kinds of people and learned not to react quickly or judge easily. Life had taught him that everyone is carrying a story, whether they show it or not. He approached the two young women, but he didn't interrupt. He waited a moment, letting the space settle naturally, letting everyone breathe. Then he spoke softly. Maya, he said, take a small break. Sit for a moment. It wasn't a command. It was care. Clear, gentle, and steady. Maya nodded, wiping her hands and moving to a small corner of the cafe, where a little wooden bench sat by the window. Sierra hesitated before following and sitting beside her. They didn't speak for a moment. They simply watched the sunlight move across the floor, stretching slowly. The cafe owner pulled up a chair and sat facing them. He looked at Sierra. Not unkindly, not disappointed, just honestly. Do you know what makes a person rich? He asked. Sierra almost replied with the answer she had always been taught. money, status, things, success. But something inside her stopped those words before they could leave her mouth. She shook her head instead. No, she whispered. Not anymore. The owner nodded slowly. A rich person is someone who can offer warmth, he said. Someone who can make others feel seen. Someone who can help without needing praise. Someone who has love in their heart. He paused, letting the words settle. There are people with money who are still very poor inside. And there are those who have little but give much, and they are rich in a way that cannot be bought. Sierra listened closely. The words came to her gently, almost carefully, as if they knew they were landing in a place that was sore and healing at the same time. She nodded once, her eyes soft. She didn't feel defensive anymore. She didn't feel the need to protect her pride. Something in her had opened, slowly, quietly, like a window letting fresh air in. I want to do better, she said. The sentence was small, but her voice carried sincerity that came from deep inside. The owner smiled a little. That is a good place to start. He didn't ask her to apologize again. He didn't ask her to prove herself. He didn't lecture. He simply trusted her next steps. Maya looked at Sierra with gentle understanding. She wasn't someone who held grudges. She didn't need to. Life had already taught her what matters most. Peace, kindness, dignity. You can come by again if you want, Maya said quietly. Not because you have to, just if you'd like. Sierra's eyes warmed, and she nodded. I would like to. They didn't hug. They didn't cry dramatically. They didn't need to. Their hearts understood something without grand gestures. Sometimes forgiveness is just silence that no longer hurts. After a moment, Sierra stood. She picked up her bag, not with the hurried confidence she used to carry, but with calm intention. She took one last look at Maya. Thank you, she said again, but this time it sounded full. True. Maya smiled softly. Take care. Sierra walked out of the cafe and into the late afternoon light. The world outside looked different now, or maybe she was seeing it differently. People walked by with purpose, laughter, and small worries. Everyone seemed more real, more connected. She felt the air on her face, and it felt new. Inside the cafe, Maya returned to her work. But her movements felt lighter now, not because her life was easier, but because her heart was not carrying the weight alone. The owner returned to his duties as well. He didn't make a big deal out of what had happened, because he understood something many people forget. True change is quiet. True respect is gentle. True strength is soft. The cafe continued its day. People ordered pastries, drank coffee, shared stories, studied, read books. Life did not pause, it simply carried on, kinder than before. Days passed, and then weeks, and Sierra returned, not just once but many times. Not dressed to impress, not surrounded by friends, not holding herself above others, but with sincerity. She helped carry trays when the cafe was busy. She offered to refill glasses. She listened more than she spoke. She watched how people treated one another. She let herself learn slowly, without needing to be perfect. Some customers recognized her from that day. But no one whispered anymore. No one stared. Because change, when real, speaks for itself. It doesn't need announcement. One afternoon, after helping wipe down tables, Sierra sat beside Maya near the window. They didn't talk about the past. They didn't need to. They simply sat in the gentle sunlight, comfortable in a quiet understanding. Their journeys had been different, but they were no longer far apart. They had met in the space where humility grows and kindness begins. And in that, there was something beautiful, something worth holding, something worth remembering. Because sometimes the most meaningful moments do not shout. They happen softly, inside two hearts that choose to see one another fully.